The day had just started for Susan Hickman on that warm June 14th morning. Like always, she decided to go for a walk around her garden. What she didn't know was that a strange little creature had already found its way into her yard. Susan figured walking around outside would be a nice way to spend time with her pets, Hannah and Ruby. But something unexpected stopped her in her tracks. From a few feet away, she noticed a pale blue egg lying in the grass. It didn't have any markings and looked like it had fallen from a nest. There was a small crack on the shell, and Susan immediately worried about the tiny life inside. But then she heard faint chirping from the egg, and a flicker of hope stirred inside her. Curious and a little anxious, she picked up the odd-looking egg and noticed another small crack. Moments later, something began to break through. A tiny creature started pushing its way out. Susan instantly felt a connection to the tiny hatchling resting in her hand. Once the baby had fully emerged, she realized it was a bird, but had no idea what kind. She looked around the garden, hoping to spot a nearby nest, but found nothing. With no clue where it came from, she made a decision. She would care for the baby bird herself. It felt like the right thing to do, instead of just leaving it behind. Back at home, Susan put together a homemade incubator and gently placed the chick inside. It wasn't as warm as a mother bird's feathers, but she was determined to give it the best care she could. Since this was her first time raising a bird, she reached out to people who had more experience. But everyone told her the same thing. "They warned me he probably wouldn't survive," she shared later in a YouTube video. Even though the odds weren't in their favor, Susan didn't lose hope. That very day, despite knowing the little one might not make it through the night, she gave him a name. She called him Klinger. Something in her hoped he was a fighter. And by the next morning, Klinger had already proved he wasn't giving up. Against what all the rehab experts had said, he made it through the night. But just like any newborn, he needed to be fed, and often. That's when Susan realized this was going to be much harder than she thought. Given how Klinger came into the world, Susan fed him every 20 to 30 minutes for the first 2 weeks. She used soaked cat food mixed with applesauce, hard-boiled egg, and bird vitamins. He might have been tiny, but Klinger sure had a big appetite. As the days went by, he grew stronger and slowly started to look more like a typical bird. Feathers began filling in, and he didn't look so odd anymore. Still, Susan couldn't figure out what kind of bird he was turning into, so she waited. About a week after he hatched, Klinger opened his eyes for the very first time. The first thing he saw was Susan, the woman who'd been caring for him all along. From that moment, something changed. It was like they both understood each other a little better. Klinger seemed to sense that he was safe with her. As more feathers grew in, Susan finally figured out what kind of bird he was, a starling. His short tail, long thin beak, and pointed wings gave it away. And when he flew, those pointed wings made him look like a little four-pointed star in the air. Susan had actually taught him to fly herself. Her hope was that one day he could be released into the wild once he was ready. But Klinger had imprinted on her. He learned quickly, picking up new skills like bathing on his own, eating without help, and playing with toys. Bath time became one of his favorite activities. And here's the fun part. Klinger even started learning to talk. His words weren't super clear, but for such a tiny bird, he was doing an amazing job. Things were going great, but a year after finding him, Susan faced a tough decision. Klinger had grown into a beautiful starling, full of life and personality. But was he ready for the wild? Could she let him go? Susan knew that wild birds learn critical survival skills from their parents, skills she couldn't teach. If she released Klinger, he likely wouldn't make it. She explained all of this in a video, saying it would have been more harmful to set him free. Thankfully, Susan lived in a state where it's legal to keep a starling, so she decided to keep caring for him. Klinger stayed with his human mom and her other pets, living a safe and happy life. But Susan wasn't the only one who had taken in a bird and changed its life. Another woman had done something incredible and used her own hair to help a bird in need. Her name is Hannah Bourne Taylor, a photographer, copywriter, and conservationist from the UK. She had moved to Accra, Ghana, with her husband and was dealing with serious anxiety and mental health struggles. As a kid, Hannah had always loved birds. She used to run after them, and when they took off into the sky, she'd jump too, pretending she had wings just like them. But when she was 8, Hannah developed OCD, and it only got worse as she got older. What she didn't know then was that her time in Ghana would lead to something deeply meaningful, something that would stay with her forever. Moving to Ghana wasn't easy at first. Hannah admitted she had a really hard time settling in when she moved there back in 2013. She said her mental health took a hit because she felt so far away from everything familiar. "The more time I spent alone, the more vulnerable and awkward I became," she once shared. After 5 years of struggling to adjust, Hannah and her husband moved to a quieter area called Akosombo. Their new home sat near the Volta River, surrounded by tall bushes, exactly the kind of place where snakes like cobras could live. Still, something about it felt right to Hannah. Then one day, everything changed. After a big thunderstorm, Hannah noticed that some bird nests had been knocked out of a mango tree during the night. The nests looked like scattered tumbleweeds lying in the mud. She found herself curious about how birds made these tiny homes, so she walked over to take a closer look. That's when she spotted a tiny bronze-winged mannequin finch. Just a baby, not even a month old. At first, Hannah left the bird there, hoping the mother would come back for it. But by the end of the day, with no sign of the mother and cobras in the area, she knew the bird wouldn't survive on its own. So she picked him up. He was so small, barely half the size of a sparrow, and he weighed next to nothing. His eyes were shut tight, and he was shaking. In that moment, Hannah made a promise. She would protect him, and hopefully one day help him return to his flock. She made him a cozy little nest out of a cardboard box lined with dish towels. For the next few weeks, she spent hours every day caring for the fragile fledgling. Over time, something incredible happened. Caring for the bird actually helped ease her OCD. The bond between them kept growing, and soon the little finch started nesting in Hannah's hair. For almost 3 months, he would fly up there whenever he felt ignored. He'd flap from her hand to her shoulder, to her head, then slide down her long hair to settle in again. Hannah described their closeness with such warmth, it was clear how much they meant to each other. Eventually, the time came to say goodbye. Her husband Robin tried releasing the bird into the wild 3 times, but each time the little one came back. It wasn't until the 4th try that he finally flew off with a wild flock and didn't return. Hannah said she cried every time she thought of him, but she also felt deeply thankful to have been a part of his life. She even dedicated her book, Fledgling, to the tiny bird who helped her see life differently. Which part of these stories touched you the most? If you enjoyed this journey, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who loves animals too. See you next time.